Welcome to episode 71 of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T.Dot, as always. Theo, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad. I feel like got a bit more energy than you since you're recovering from a bad cold. But yeah, not bad. Bit of stress on my side, having to move out of my flat soon and a new job. So kind of all that onboarding stress that goes with a new job. But other than that, going out for some nice runs end of October. So still a bit of daylight come the end of your work shift. And yeah, just enjoying the Chelsea performances. Gutted we didn't win yesterday, but we'll touch upon that soon. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. So I was going to say, added stress, but then you watch Chelsea versus Brentford and then that adds more stress to your life as well. But no, I'm good. I'm good. Like you said, just sort of recovering from whatever this horrible cold, whatever I've got. But yeah, just, usual stuff really. We'll get onto the game. But before we do that, if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And again, go to Apple Podcasts, Apple and Spotify podcasts. Make sure you go back and listen to all the previous episodes that we've done on there. Social accounts as well at the bottom, so make sure you give them a follow. But let's get straight into last night's game because I expected changes. I didn't expect 5 changes. I thought that was quite a lot due from Graham Potter in terms of who he rested and who he brought into the team. But what was your initial thoughts on the lineup going into that game? Yes, we know, we knew that Thiago Silva was potentially going to be rested and the likes of Aubameyang, Sterling, but was you surprised by any of the players that did feature or did start the game yesterday?
I mean, there was no real surprises with Thiago Silva. He's one of those players where we need to keep him absolutely, ready for those big games. And United on Saturday is a big game, so he did feature against Villa as well. So it makes sense to rest him midweek. We've got another midweek fixture next week in the Champions League, so not playing him makes complete sense. I was a bit surprised that Chilwell didn't even feature at all in the squad, not even on the bench. But then Potter did mention that he is still recovering from an ACL injury. We have to remember that it's his first, couple months of football since almost this time last year, I think. So yeah, we can't really risk him and give him 90 minutes of football every other game. But that's why we've got Cucurella in. Very surprised not to see Pulisic feature. He was a player that hasn't featured at all since the 3-0 win over Wolves, where he did score. And I thought him coming off the bench had a big impact on the game and looked really lively and sharp. So he's a player that I think could have maybe potentially started from the off. And then the one that just didn't make sense for me is Gallagher. Why start him if he was ill? Like Potter mentioned at full time, I don't know if he was ill or didn't feel well after the game had kicked off, but surely the symptoms were there. So I don't think that was a tactical change. I mean, if it was a tactical change, it's maybe embarrassing for Gallagher, but if he was ill and needed to come off, then just don't risk starting him. But other than that, resting the players like Raheem Sterling and Aubameyang and Thiago Silva and keeping those players fresh for United on a Saturday makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, it was. When I did the preview, I kind of would love to have seen maybe Patrick Aubameyang and Sterling start that game. And I think I get we need to rest. I get the rotation. I get that it's a massive, congested season already and that there's loads of fixtures coming up. There's a World Cup coming up in a couple of weeks as well. So I get all the rotation, but I don't know. I went into that game and I saw Kai Havertz, Armando Broja, who we'll get onto as well shortly. I seen them two and I thought, it could be, this is going to go one of two ways. They're either going to do really well and they're going to prove me wrong, or they're going to either not create as many chances as they should and maybe miss a couple of really good chances, which I feel like they did during that game. But I don't think, Conor Gallagher, I think I agree with you, it's a strange one. I think obviously symptoms must be there. You don't just become sick, 15 minutes and then it just suddenly comes on. If it is, then surely, you take some sort of anti-sickness or whatever before the game. But, if he's ill, then it's unfortunate for him. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I thought was, again, I wanted to see him in midfield and we got to see him more on that right wing back, which I get, Reece James is injured. Azpilicueta can't really play there as such. And who else can you put there bar maybe Raheem Sterling, who again I didn't really like at the weekend against Aston Villa playing in that position. So I just feel like we lose something in midfield when Ruben Loftus-Cheek isn't there, and obviously Gallagher coming off, Kovacic coming in. It just seemed a bit of a mixed bag yesterday. So I get the changes. I get why we needed to do them, but sometimes you've got to just stick with what you know. Maybe make those changes during the game, in my opinion. And I think Graham Potter as a manager is obviously more qualified than I am, but sometimes you've got to make those changes, I think, in the game as opposed to make them, start of the game. I didn't really agree with that myself, but we have to talk about Brentford first of all as well, because I feel like Brentford set up really well. Obviously they kind of almost matched us like for like in formation. They done well, had that five at the back at pretty much most of the game. Didn't really allow us to play the game we probably wanted to. It kind of made us have to go out to the wing back areas more often than not, take shots on that weren't available. What was your thoughts on Brentford?
Yeah, like you said, I thought they were superb. When you go to the Brentford Community Stadium, no matter Brentford's form, it's going to be a tough game. It's really going to be a tough game. They beat Brighton 2-0 last week or over the weekend. And then the week before that, they lost, I think it was 5-1 to Newcastle. So it was kind of an inconsistent, this Brentford team has been very hit and miss lately. But when you travel to Brentford, you go to the community stadium, it's going to be a tough fixture no matter what. We did so well to win 1-0 there last season with that Ben Chilwell goal. And Mendy, you have to remember, was on fantastic form, just like Kepa last night. But like you said, I think they were very compact defensively. They didn't really allow us to get into their penalty box a lot of times. I think it was Ethan Pinnock put in some really big blocks, and he was probably second man of the match after Kepa. Likewise with their keeper David Raya, he made some fantastic saves, particularly for Carney Chukwuemeka. I'll get there. A big save for Carney to deny Carney at the end, and I thought, they were very good. I think any other day that game could have been a 1-0 to Brentford. It could have been a 1-0 to Chelsea. So in a way, it felt like a draw was deserved. Obviously, as a Chelsea fan, you're gutted because you're dropping 2 points. But it's one of those ones where sometimes you just have to think maybe a 0-0 is a fair result at the end of the day. But yeah, credit to Brentford. They set up really well. They were compact defensively. Lucky as well that Mbeumo missed quite a big sitter as well with that header he had. And lucky as well that we didn't really give Tony too many chances other than the 2 headers he had.
Yeah, I was just about to say about Mbeumo because I think he missed the goal of the game, wasn't it? I think, he should really put that away. Either side of Kepa, and it's a goal. But I think we have to credit Kepa. I think you just said, arguably the man of the match. I thought he's obviously proven to Graham Potter, a lot of Chelsea fans, including myself at some point, who questioned his ability, questioned if he was the right man at Chelsea. And he's clearly putting in these performances now. He's playing with a lot of confidence. And, it's unfortunate for Mendy because he's just got injured at the wrong time. He's got injured. New manager comes in. Kepa's playing in the form of his life, doing really well. I do think Kepa has matured as a goalkeeper. I think on and off the field, I think he's showing levels that we know or knew that he had in him. When we signed him, he's a brilliant goalkeeper. What do you think about the fact that obviously with this dilemma, not just in the goalkeeper area? I mean, we'll talk about Kante, Jorginho as well later on. But what do you think about going forward? Because obviously Graham Potter seems to like goalkeeper. He likes to play it from the back. So if you had to pick one of the two, it looks like Kepa's the one that he's going to favour more. He's a bit more better with his feet, playing out from the back. But what does that spell for Mendy if that is the case?
I mean, football, there's going to be chances for both keepers to play, and all you need maybe is Mendy to play the cup game against City that's coming up in November, put in a big performance, and that might change Potter's mind. Or after the World Cup, there'll be a lot of FA Cup games, and that kind of a similar spell for one of the 2 keepers. But for now, there's no reason to drop Kepa. He's been fantastic. I think it was the Amazon Prime Video sports pundits were comparing him to almost like an elastic band with the way he just stretches up to deny those headers. I'm really impressed as well with how he closes down space and how quickly he comes off his line in those one-on-one situations, which I think we saw in the second half of the Brentford Chelsea game last night. So I think, like I said in the previous episode, it's healthy competition for both keepers. We have to remember as well, we got a new goalkeeper coach, I think, this summer that came along with Potter. So maybe that's helped Kepa develop as well and learn more from him. But yeah, there'll be chances for both keepers. But for now, I think we have to stick with Kepa. He's kept 5 clean sheets in a row, I believe.
Yeah,
And that's
eight
it.
starts, 5 clean sheets.
And it's not just clean sheets where you're just kind of there just to make up the numbers and just catch the easy balls. It's clean sheets where he's made some big saves to deny players and got us the 3 points at times. So yeah, credit to Kepa, and I think we've just got to stick with him now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it'd be silly to change goalkeepers for the sake of it. And I'm sure if it was the other way around, which it has been at times where Mendy's been the goalkeeper that's been playing in form, and Kepa has just been sat waiting for his moment, and he's taken now. But I want to talk about Trevor Chalobah, because in the preview, I said, Thiago Silva, brilliant centre back. We know that will be, 38 years of age, still playing at the top of his game. But I look at Trevor Chalobah, and I think he's ready. I think he's ready to make a mark and a claim to be a regular starter. And by regular, I mean someone who could easily, even in a back four, you could potentially play, Chalobah ahead of Koulibaly alongside Thiago Silva. He looks ready. First to every ball yesterday. Any ball that came into the box, he was confident enough to get rid of it. What's your thoughts on Trevor Chalobah becoming a more regular player for Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, all Chelsea fans know how good he is as a player, how mature he is for his age, and he just needs that consistent game time, which we saw, I think, this time last year with him. And then I think come January, he was featuring less regularly and a bit more sporadically. But no, he's really matured into a great player, versatile as well. He can play all down that back three and the back two as well. I definitely DM as well. That's something we saw, I think, when he was on loan at Lorient. Yeah, we have to remember Silva's 38. Azpilicueta is 33, 34 now. We don't have that long with these players left, maybe max another season of them. But I think we're going to have to look into the future, and rather than just splash out on, another Fofana who's going to cost us 80 something million, we should definitely nurture Chalobah. And I really hope Potter sees a great player in him now that he's featured in the last couple of games since Fofana's got that injury against AC Milan at home.
I like him. There's a lot to see the qualities in him. You can see them already. We got to see that, like I said in the preview, we got to see a lot of that last season. I just think the consistency needs to come now, and I think he'll get there. I think he'll get it. I don't, again, unfortunate to Fofana for the injury that he's picked up, but this could be his moment now to get into that team on a more regular basis. But another sort of, that I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't sure on was Broja starting the game, who I thought played well. I think he definitely gave Ben Mee a nightmare for especially the first half. I mean, 10 years from now, I think Broja stays down when Ben Mee takes him down. I mean, it could have been a red card. It should have been a VAR moment, in my opinion. But I just feel like Broja, I think maybe the fan base are expecting a bit much from Broja. We've got to remember his age still. He's still relatively young. He's still learning his trade as a footballer. There's good signs about him, but I do feel there's things that, as a striker, I'm just not seeing in him. But I think that's just due to his development. I think. What's your thoughts on Broja and his performance last night?
Yeah, I think it was a good performance. It wasn't remarkable. It didn't blow me away. But we have to remember that was his first start for Chelsea. This is his first full season for Chelsea in the Premier League. Like you said, I thought he did really well for that one chance to get ahead of Ben Mee, even though Ben Mee was in front of him to start off. And any other day, if he stays down, I think VAR's got seriously looks at that and possibly gives a red card to Ben Mee. But I think the fact he gets back up, almost VAR just him. It saves Ben Mee in a way. But yeah, I think it was a deserved start as well. All the other cameos he's had has been off the bench, particularly that one against Wolves where he took that goal really well. So I think it was a deserved start. I think maybe we had high expectations with him starting, given how he's performed in the previous games. But he is still quite raw. He is still quite young. It is his first full season at Chelsea in the Premier League. So we don't have to. Our expectations can't be too high of him yet. But I think he's definitely that choice to have amongst maybe Havertz and Aubameyang to play as a striker for sure.
I'm glad you brought him up, because I was just about to bring up Kai Havertz, who, for me, I feel like we spoke about him in depth on here previously, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing any improvement I don't see anything that he offers. No, I do in glimpses, and I'm talking, very minimal moments in games where he might make a really good run, or he takes on a player, or he might score, he might do something a bit. It's not enough. And last night was one of those games where he was on the for me, he was on the pitch 20 minutes too long. I think he should have been subbed off a bit earlier. Um, yeah, I don't want to single him out because I think he did he done enough in that game yesterday to put himself in the right position. I think even for one of the goals, it might have been when Brozier was pulled down actually, and I think he was in the box, and it's almost a tapping for Havertz if he reads the game a bit better. But it's his third season now, and I'm still not really impressed by him. I'm not seeing anything where I think, right, I can see the progression. I can see that he's actually trying to do something. He's going to carry this team the next couple of seasons. He might be the person to carry the team. I don't get any of that from Kai Havertz. And even sometimes his body language I'm seeing now, I just think, does he know that his time's up? Does he want out? It just, something doesn't feel right with Kai Havertz, in my opinion. What do you think?
I thought he was poor yesterday. Like you said, he stayed on the pitch for far too long. Obviously, that's Potter's decision, but I think the sub was made with Aubameyang coming on at the 80th minute. And that could have easily been done at the 60th minute. I think having Raheem Sterling, Aubameyang, and Pulisic on together at the same time would have really brought some kind of dynamic football, like we saw in the last 20 minutes or so. But yeah, his body language is poor at times. I thought, the goal he scored against Wolves, I didn't mention it in our post-match review of that game. I thought it was lucky. It was a good header, but it was almost Sarr just doesn't move. And I think he needs to offer more. He does need to offer more, not just getting himself in the positions, but actually creating chances for himself, which I don't think he does enough at times. And it almost felt like yesterday he was already thinking about Germany and the World Cup and wasn't fully committed, or didn't want to commit in case he got injured or in case, something may happen. But I think it is the season now. Like you said, it's his third season where our expectations are very high with him. Every player's got that number 9 who's guaranteed at least 15 goals a season, whether that be Harry Kane, Gabriel Jesus, Liverpool, now Salah starting to find form again. We don't really have that. I think we all thought it'd be Havertz this season, but it's not. It's not going to be Havertz. He's only got, I think, 2 goals this season against a very poor West Ham and Wolves side. And we need to really kind of get him to perform. And I think the way to get him to perform is almost to drop him out of the team, favour Aubameyang, favour maybe Sterling, favour Brozier, and then make him know that your place in the starting lineup's not guaranteed. And when he gets that chance back in, which could have been yesterday, just give it your all. Prove to people that you are the player that can get us those 15 goals that we can rely on in these type of games. But I completely agree. We were chatting about it on WhatsApp. I thought he was probably our poorest player on the pitch yesterday in terms of performance. And I don't think he's kind of showed anything or warranted a start against United on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a strange one because I feel like he's got the qualities to be a really good footballer at Chelsea, but I honestly don't see it. And there's only so long as Chelsea fans, and I'm sure, a lot of Chelsea fans are losing patience, but there's only so long we can kind of say, we want to see that improvement in him. I think we should be seeing it by now. And if we're not seeing it 3 years into his Chelsea career, he's had 3 different managers. Okay, that's probably not helped him, but I just don't see it. And I want it to be, I want to be wrong. I want him to prove me wrong, but I just don't see how he fits into this Chelsea team, especially going forward, especially if we bring in other, attacking players next summer. But I do agree with you. I think the World Cup is not just on Havertz, but I think there's a lot of players now that's starting to think, you're seeing the likes of Diego Jota, and obviously, Kante's missing the World Cup. You're seeing a lot of these players who potentially wanted to play in this World Cup not going. You do think, it could work in 2 ways. Does he actually want to go to the World Cup? Because he's got to be performing well to go there. But also, yeah, of course, he doesn't want to get injured. But to go to the World Cup, surely you've got to play well for your club. So it's a catch-22 for him. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think, it doesn't really... I wouldn't see him starting, which we'll get onto in a minute, starting against Manchester United. I just don't see it. But I want to talk about Chukwuemeka. I think I've said his name right. Hopefully I've said his name right. But I want to, because I thought he came on. He looks good. He looked really good. That's the first time I've really Well, I mean, I watched him a few times for Villa, but this is the first time I've watched him and thought, yeah, I like him. He looks like a really good player. Unfortunate not to score, I think, near the end of the game as well. But he looks big, powerful, strong. I hate using those buzzwords, but he looks like that sort of player that can take on players. And I was a bit confused about what role he was actually going to play when he came on. What did you think of him when he eventually came on the pitch?
I thought if we were going to get a goal in that game, it would have been when I think Pulisic and Carney came on at the same time, because I thought that changed the game, and it was almost we were the more dominant side after that. Like you said, there's still kind of areas of his game where he could improve. There were times where the ball kind of rolled past him in the penalty box where he could maybe just have a little burst of movement to get those kind of loose balls. But I thought other than that, he was a very solid cameo. Very unlucky not to score at the end. Like you said, those buzzwords, they do sound quite cliche nowadays in football, but he is big, he is strong. He is, I think, quite a smart footballer for his age as well. And I think he's got a very bright future at Chelsea as well. And I think it's one of those transfers that almost went under the radar. But I think this time next year, we'll be almost thinking, what signing that was, if he does kind of get this game time under the Potter that he needs to develop. I think if you can escape maybe the kind of the loan system and get, lost out on loan to a championship side or a lower Premier League side and actually feature more regularly in the Premier League for Chelsea, then I think that could really help him develop. And I think, from what I saw yesterday, there are signs there that he can definitely start for Chelsea at times in these type of games where we do need a player that can fill out those midfield positions. And I think, like you said, I was quite lost when he came on where he was playing, because it was still Kovacic and Jorginho in midfield, but I think Carney was maybe higher up the pitch.
Yeah,
which kind of maybe he's more of an offensive midfielder, maybe a number 10 or a box to box potentially. But I thought, it was a very solid performance, and I'm always one of those players that kind of excites you when he comes on, because I didn't maybe watch him as much as you when he was at Villa, but I don't know too much about him. But from what I've seen so far, it's exciting. It definitely is, and as well when he came on against Wolves a few weekends ago.
Yeah, and it's strange because obviously we still haven't seen Dennis Zakaria, who, I have to give him the honourable shout out every episode I'm doing now, because I'm still struggling as to how surely his contracts will be, or his loan deal will be questioned or terminated come January, because he's on the bench. We need a goal. He's probably not the person you'd want to bring on, but at the same time as well, I just don't know what he's got to do to get a game. I really don't. I'm
waiting for that Twitter account to be created days and since Zakaria has played football or something like that, because I think you looked at the Sal move, at least he was getting the odd game or the odd minutes in the games. But I think with the depth we have in midfield, and it looks like I think we mentioned in the previous episode, Potter's now favoured Carney over Zakaria. Then I think it could easily be Cousins for him at Chelsea in January.
I was trying to think, has there ever been a loan or a player that's played or been signed to Chelsea and not even at least?
I think even Quaresma, Pato, Falcao, all those players, they played at least 2 games, I think.
Yeah,
but
I had to. If someone can in the description just let us know, because I personally don't think there's ever been a Chelsea player during our time where this has happened. I can't remember the last time it's happened.
Yeah, and so we won't have any football to play kind of between almost mid-November and mid-December. And then next thing you know, it's January. So there's not a lot of games left before January to make our decision on whether he stays or whether he goes back to Juventus.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. We spoke about Manchester United. Let's talk about them. I haven't got the best of records against them, but what's your thoughts going into this game? We're going to do our predicted lineup in a minute, but what's your thoughts going into the game?
I mean, like we were saying, as we were waiting to go live, we haven't beaten United in the league since November 2017, where an Azpilicueta cross found Alvaro Morata, and he got a nice header in. So a lot's changed since then. But yeah, I think it's one of those games where no matter United's form, sometimes we just always seem to bottle it. He deserves a chance, Zakaria. That's my brother. I do think he deserves a chance for sure. But it's whether he'll get it with Potter, or maybe since he wasn't a Potter signing, maybe he won't feature as regularly. But going back to United, I'm kind of nervous. They played very well against Tottenham last night. Bruno Fernandes, almost a very inconsistent player with his performances, and his body language when they're playing well is great, and when they're not playing so well, just seems to kind of go in the bin. But yeah, tricky. It's going to be a tricky game. I'm glad that we're at home when we play them, because I can't see us losing at home with how solid we've been defensively, and I think Thiago Silva will feature again. But in terms of United, they're slowly finding their stride now. There were some impressive statistics about them last night. Anthony, Bruno, Rashford, slowly starting to find his feet again. I feel like maybe even Martial might be fit for the weekend. I'm not too sure. And then you also got Ronaldo. You know what Ronaldo can bring. Obviously, he's not the same Ronaldo that we were seeing a couple of seasons ago, but he'll be up for the occasion for sure should he feature. But no, I'm nervous, but I can't see us losing. I think it will be a draw or a Chelsea win.
Well, before we came on, that was one of the things we said was, the amount of draws that we've had at Stamford Bridge against Manchester United, not beating them since 2017, like you said, Morata's header. I'm confident, more so than I should be, which is a bit weird. I don't feel like I should be this confident going into these kind of games, but I think the fact that we've rested quite a lot of players, we did, rested arguably, our best centre back in Thiago Silva. I feel like Patrick Aubameyang will have something to prove in this game. The same with Raheem Sterling. I'm expecting these sort of players to step up. Mason Mount, he came off after the hour mark last night, but I think that was probably another tactical thing from Graham Potter to give him that rest ahead of this big game on Saturday. I do agree with you 100%. I feel like United is slowly, quietly doing their business, in the league, and they're just getting these wins, and no one's really talking about them as much. Obviously, I know Ronaldo, I think, stormed off before the game was done yesterday, which if anyone who's watching this remembers, I did say he's a problem, and this is probably why I wouldn't have Chelsea, but I'd be impressed if he starts or even features in the game against us. I think his days are done at United, if I'm honest. I don't think Ronaldo's got... he's completely fell out with Ten Hag. In a way, that could probably work in our favour. It could disrupt the next couple of days for them, going into those training camps and training every day and having that sort of hanging over your head as a manager and a player that doesn't want to be there. It could actually work in our favour. But I do agree with you. I think the likes of, Rashford's playing really well. Bruno Fernandes looks a totally different player without Ronaldo, screaming down his ear. He looks like a really good player. And even defensively, I think they look really good, which, again, we haven't really said that about a United team under Oli or, any of the other previous managers. So I'm confident that we should get something. Like you said, I don't think we'll lose, but we really need to win this game. We really do, because of the fixtures we've got coming up, and you look at the other teams around us as well. Spurs, obviously Arsenal sit on top of the table. Manchester City, that we know will just churn out results regardless. United, I think, are only a point maybe or so behind us now. So, it's a big game on Saturday, massive game.
Yeah, it's one of those games as well. If you want to be top four or competing to win the league, yeah, sure, they're a direct rival, but you still need to be winning these games if you want to stand a chance. And that's what we did in our Premier League winning seasons. We won these type of games: United at home, Liverpool at home, City at home, even. So yeah, I can't see us losing, like you said, but I think it's going to be a big effort from all of us, from all the Chelsea players that play, to get the 3 points on Saturday. However,
yeah, I agree with that 100%. I agree 100%. Yeah, this isn't my team. This is just the team that is populated. But let's try and pick what lineup we might see on Saturday versus Manchester United. Obviously, the first thing is first. Would you go with the three centre backs? Would you go with your two wing backs, or would you revert back to a back four? Obviously, I think United play four at the back, don't they? They tend to try and play with that four at the back, but is this a game where we need to try and match them, or would you stick with what we did last night and have the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Raheem Sterling as your right wing back?
I would. I think I'd stick with a back three and have the wing back options. And as always, that Potter seems to sometimes change things halfway through games or in the second half and revert back to a back four. But I think I'll go for the back three. I would remove Aspi, however. He did play the 90 minutes last night, and I'd swap him out for Silva. I think that makes complete sense. Obviously, Silva didn't feature yesterday, so he's had almost a full week now to rest. And these are the type of games we need Silva in, the big games. And I think sometimes you'll put in those blocks that can get us the 3 points or rescue something from games. And then I definitely play him alongside Koulibaly and Chiloba, like seen on the screen.
What about left wing back? Because obviously Ben Chilwell, who's coming back, and like I think you said it earlier, he's coming back from a massive injury. These injuries can, end your career almost. You never come back as the player that you once was. So would you? And obviously he didn't play yesterday. He wasn't even on the bench. But would you stick with Cucurella or with playing a Manchester United team and having that defensive mindset? Would you probably stick with Chilwell, who for me is a bit more defensive? Yes, he gets forward just as much as Cucurella, but I do feel defensively Ben Chilwell possibly be the best at left wing back. What's your thoughts?
I think I'd go with Ben Chilwell. Like you said, he's that more maybe defensive option, which we'll need against United. We can't commit too many bodies forward. And also, we rested him last night. He wasn't even on the bench. And I think, sure, he's recovering from that ACL, but I also think that's because we have United in mind on Saturday and he's probably likely to feature. So I think I'd go with Ben Chilwell. And we do have to also remember he is a threat going forward at times. And he did get I think he scored in 4 or 5 goals, 4 or 5 games in a row, I think, start of last season or when he did feature last season. So, and I do agree Cucurella has been slightly poor recently. I think his performance against Villa in the first half, you mentioned it in your review. I think Matty Cash and Leon Bailey were kind of all over him and getting forward and getting ahead of him. So I think it's time maybe to give him a rest and start Chilwell on Saturday.
And that, to give him his credit, that was at left centre back, which
True.
I'm not in favour of seeing him in that role again, because I know he can play there, but it just didn't suit him at all. He looked like a headless chicken running around. But I do agree, he's definitely not. I think he's not put in the performances that we would potentially have expected from him when he signed for the club. Even in his natural sort of left back or left wing back position, he's still not, pulling up trees. So I think he has to be not that he has to be careful, but I think very much like when it was Alonso and Chilwell, there is healthy competition for that position. And I think, Chilwell, especially, over the next couple of months or so, hopefully he gets back to the level that he was before his injury. It could be an interesting, debate between the two of them, who starts ahead of who going forward. But I do agree that he's got to be putting in some better performances if he wants to retain that position.
I was also going to mention Chilwell, probably one of those players that wants to make the squad for the World Cup, and maybe has even hinted to Potter, please limit my game time so I can try to be fit for the World Cup and not risk another injury, but do obviously give me the game time I need to show Southgate that I'm ready to play in the World Cup. So I think that may have played a part in him not featuring yesterday too. Yeah,
no, I agree with that 100%. Midfield, I've gone for the two midfield, Kovacic and Jorginho. Well, I haven't, but that's what the screen is showing us at the moment. Would you change at all? Obviously, we've got Ruben Loftus-Cheek currently at right wing back, but I mean, I it's a hard one because I love Ruben Loftus-Cheek in midfield, but if you move him into midfield, who do you put at right wing back? I just think he's limited playing in that right wing back role. And I'd much prefer to see him in the midfield with the energy that he's got. But what's your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with you. It almost feels like Reece James's injury has forced Loftus-Cheek to play in that position. I wouldn't risk Azpilicueta. I don't think he has the legs anymore to play right wing back, which kind of means he's the one option at the moment at right wing back, and that means we have to play a double pivot of Kovacic and Jorginho in midfield. Agree with you. I love seeing Loftus-Cheek in midfield, particularly since Potter's taken over. He's put in some brilliant performances there. But I think given the circumstances and the injuries, I'd go with a midfield of Kovacic and Jorginho, which is what we saw in pretty much all the Brentford game yesterday, seeing that Gallagher was forced off early.
Yeah, and it worked. It did work. It's not ideal, but I think out of our midfield options, I think that is probably the best that we have at the moment. Unless we want to play Zakaria, who doesn't seem to be getting a sniff at anything at the moment. So I think that's the two that I would go with as well. I think Kovacic gives you that energy going forward, and like I've always said, I like the fact that Jorginho does a lot of that dirty work as well that sometimes goes unnoticed during games. And I know he's a Marmite for a lot of the fan base. You either love him or you hate him, but I think he does a lot of that dirty work, very similar to Kante, who let's quickly talk about Kante, obviously being out for 4 months. What does that mean for Kante? Because, obviously, no real talk of a contract that we know of, very similar to Jorginho as well. But for 4 months, he's basically missed the remainder of this season now. Would you offer him a new contract? Would you allow him to leave on a free at the end of the season, or what does it spell for Kante now?
It's so hard to offer a player a contract when he's injured for 4 months because you can't really see what he's capable of doing on the pitch at the moment. He's not putting any performances that makes the manager think go to the board and say give him a new contract. Potter's never seen him probably in training or on the pitch as well. And we said even before this big injury that I think maybe since that Europa League final, we've probably only seen Kante feature in about half our games every season since then. He is injury prone. And when he goes down, that he's going down for the next month or so. So I don't know if this surgery he's having is going to fix those issues or if it's just a recurring problem that he's facing. But I do worry that this could be Kante's last season and this injury has almost accelerated that happening. But then again, like we saw in that first half of the Spurs game, he is so vital. He's like a clog in midfield that makes things work and he does all the dirty work, like you said. And when he went off in that second half injured, it all went to shit in a way in that Chelsea Spurs game and they got their 2 goals straight after. So when he does play well, he's our best player and you can't really replace him. But at the same time, maybe it's time to look ahead and think, how can we build this Chelsea team without Kante? And maybe that's looking at a player like Carney Chukwueze. So yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think come February, when he recovers from the surgery, he won't be match fit either. He won't be match fit come when he recovers. So there's possibility that he misses the whole season or only features maybe come April, May time. But it's going to be very difficult for him to, earn that new contract that we struggle to give at times to players that are over 30 as well.
Yeah, it's one of the shouts that I sort of thought, especially before he got injured, was does he need to consider his international commitments? And there are some players who do that, to extend their club career. They retire from international football, get themselves another year or so in club football, and then call it a day. But I just wonder, a lot of the time when he comes back or he gets injured is normally due to his international. There was that whole period of where he was going on international duty with France, coming back injured, comes back, rushing back, recurring injury again. Very similar to what I think's happened here. He was on the road to recovery, rehabilitation was going really well, and then a massive setback, puts you back 4 months. So whether that's the club rushing him or the fact that he just seems like a player that's been wrapped up so much and done so well over the last couple of seasons that now it's finally taking its toll on him. But I do agree with you. It's difficult to give a player, as much as he's world class, as much as he's someone that we do miss. I struggle to see how you can offer someone a contract, especially for the length that he probably wants as well. I struggle to see how you can do that. So again, it's one of those things very much like Thiago Silva. We need to start thinking, beyond life of N'Golo Kante and potentially Thiago Silva and start thinking a bit, outside the box a little bit more. But let's get back to the lineup. I've gone for Mason Mount, or in that sort of more central role. That's where he is at the moment. Would you leave him there? Would you have that front three? Would you try and change any of the front three, or would you leave it as it is?
I'd stick with that front three. I think it's the front three that worked so well against in the 2 legs against AC Milan, if I'm not mistaken. I do think it's quite harsh on Pulisic, because I think Pulisic had a big impact on the game yesterday, like I mentioned, and looked really sharp and almost like he was likely to score had we played another maybe 5-10 minutes of that game. So I think he'll feature, whether it's starts or comes off the bench, because I do, as much as I like Sterling, he is very indecisive and sometimes takes a bit too long on the ball or a bit clumsy at times with his feet. But he is also a brilliant player and he can get those goals like we saw in the Salzburg game and earlier in the season against Leicester. But I think just for the kind of pace he can offer and experience as well, I think I would go with that front three over Aubameyang and Sterling, with Mount slightly behind.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Pulisic is a player that when he comes on, he does look a bit electrifying, and he looks like he's going to be able to do something. I'll agree with you as well. Sterling takes one or too many touches, doesn't he? Or he overcomplicates something that could be so easy. But it's the three that I want to see with the consistency. And I think, Aubameyang will complement Sterling and Sterling vice versa. And I think Mount playing more central is potentially why we're seeing more from Mount. I think, when he's stuck on that right side, or he's, almost playing as almost as a third, additional striker, it just doesn't suit him, and I think he's able to cause more chaos in that role that he plays, just behind, Sterling or Aubameyang. But I think it's right. I think it's good that he's coming into form at the time that he is. We definitely need him to do that a bit more often. But I couldn't really look at another front three. And if we want to, we're talking about Graham Potter needing to know his best 11 and consistency, I think you do have to stick with that. As long as Kai Havertz isn't playing, I think we should be in a good position. But another player I want to quickly talk about before we wrap up is Hakim Ziyech, who has obviously come back from injury. Don't think he's featured since maybe August, I think, for us. So
I think Southampton he hasn't started since Southampton away, has he?
Yeah, which it could be an opportunity to maybe not bring him in at the start, but definitely bring him in as a sub, as another option going forward as well. Obviously, depending on how Conor Gallagher is, another option going forward as well. Chukwuemeka, who for me, again, looked really good, and like you said, kind of played a bit more in that advanced midfield role. Another option as well. So I think we've got options off the bench on Saturday, and I'm confident. I'm going to go into the game confident. I like the line. Obviously, Kepa retaining his place in goal. Part of me thinks Potter's going to go to a back four and potentially do the 4-2-2-2 thing, and maybe have that hybrid right wing back as Ruben Loftus-Cheek can do that. But part of me thinks he's going to do that, and it's really annoying because we don't know how Graham Potter's going to set up these teams. But I do like that lineup. And I think
I'm not sure he saw the sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure he saw the manager interview between Potter and Thomas Frank at the end of the game, and I think Thomas Frank asked him that question, like, why do you change your lineup so often? And so it kind of, you don't know, you can't predict a Potter lineup for sure.
And I think that's the first time I was trying to work out yesterday again, have I ever witnessed, because I think they spoke before the game as well together, and I can't remember I don't think there's ever been a moment where I've seen both managers side by side, doing a post and pre-match discussion in the way that it worked as well. Worked really well. So, it's hard to predict, and I like that as well. It's unpredictable. It keeps obviously Ten Hag guessing as well. But impressed and happy with that lineup. But before we go, always we're going to do our predictions. So I'm going to let you go first. I think you just said a draw before, didn't you? So
I did say a draw. I think we're going to have to do very, very good defensively, which we have, to kind of keep that clean sheets, which we've gotten in the last 5 games. But I think with the attacking threat that we saw that United can offer against, like they did against Tottenham, I think they've got a goal in them. But let's be confident and say 2-1 Chelsea. I'm going to be confident.
We're actually going to agree for once, because I still think 2-1. I think I've said that quite a lot this season, but I don't think we're going to keep a clean sheet. I think United are a team that obviously got their tails up at the moment. They're doing really well. I think they'll score, but I think we've got the squad defensively and in attack to definitely cause problems. We're at Stamford Bridge as well, which I think will help. But I think regardless of the team, I think we've got enough about us on and off the bench to beat them on Saturday. Crosbanter's saying rotating the squad is good, but not at the expense of results and keeping people happy. What's your response to that, Theo?
Well, we've done very well rotating the squad with Potter. We've gotten the results that we needed. Obviously, yesterday was a bit of more of a struggle, resting the likes of Aubameyang, Sterling, and Thiago Silva. But I think it is needed at times. We can't. Maybe had we kept all those, had we not rotated the squad as much, we'd be seeing a higher injury list as well. So I think it does make sense at times. But I think, like you mentioned, like maybe we wanted Aubameyang to feature at least a bit earlier, or maybe even start the game potentially yesterday. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a tricky one to talk about.
I think it's hard because I think, we either don't rotate the squad and we end up with another Reece James, another N'Golo Kante, a long-term injury, another Ben Chilwell, or we do rotate, which is why we've got the 5 subs now as well. I think rotation isn't the problem. I think it's the execution of the subs, which has to be spot on. And I think, if we can get that right, and we've got to remember as well, I'm seeing a lot on Twitter. We didn't lose yesterday. we actually we drew. We actually got a point, which I think, yes, we dropped 2 points. I get that 100%. But you've got to remember, this is Graham Potter's first month in charge still. He's still learning the team. He's still learning tactically about Chelsea, not in terms of football as a manager or a coach, but at Chelsea, it's still in his infancy. So I think the fact he's unbeaten still is a positive to take. And we didn't lose yesterday. And I think that's, you go on Twitter and I'm seeing meltdowns, and I get it. I do get that. But I just think we didn't lose yesterday, and we actually didn't play poor. We just didn't finish our chances, which is like Groundhog Day. So I do think the rotation helped. But yeah, I think we've got to remember that there's a lot of football to play as well. Yeah, and I agree. That's why I said the execution of the subs is for me is it's key. You've got to get those subs right. The timing of the subs is another thing as well. Aubameyang coming on with 10 minutes to go is, he's not going to affect the game as such. So it's a difficult one, but I do understand what you're saying 100%. It's a disgruntled Chelsea fan there, but makes some very good points.
If he's only joining now, he can go back and listen to what we had to say earlier about Havertz potentially.
Yeah. You won't be disappointed anyway. But so you're going 2-1. I'm going to go 2-1. I think it's going to be a really good game. 5:30 kickoff. Not sure if you'll go. Are you going to the game?
I'm going. I think I'm sitting on my own though. I've just got the single ticket, I think.
Listen, sometimes they're the best games. So
sometimes,
enjoy
no one to distract you. Yeah, exactly.
You can talk to yourself and just enjoy the game in peace. But enjoy the game anyway, regardless. Let's hope we get 3 points and really good positive result again. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But for anyone who's listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give us a like, let us know your thoughts in the comments as well, and go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and make sure you listen to all the previous episodes. And as always, make sure you follow the social accounts, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. Theo, as always, thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Therapy is over for another week. We'll be back next week, hopefully with another podcast episode. This has been episode 71 of From the Shed End. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll be back next week.